to set myself up to go to medical school. I ended up shadowing a dermatologist, and I think it was around maybe 6 to 8 weeks, every Tuesday and Thursday, something like that. And I remember thinking, I don't really like going into the hospital on a day-to-day basis. I can't really picture myself doing this kind of work.
I'm Naman Pandey. This is the Ready Set Do podcast, and in this episode, my guest is Jackie Henning. In part 1 of my 2-part series with her, Jackie shared super actionable tips and tricks for anyone looking to break into product management roles. In this episode, which is part 2, she takes us through how she herself accidentally fell into the PM role and almost unknowingly pivoted from the medicine field into the PM field. If you're an aspiring product manager that at least sometimes thinks about product but are from a completely different industry, you'll probably be surprised by just how simple it can actually be to break into product. And by the end of this episode, I promise to leave you with at least the first few steps in order to do exactly that.
This was kind of like the segue into health tech, because we were collaborating with, some human factors engineers at UT Austin, some UX researchers, some designers, and some engineers.
The clinical stakeholders, as you said, because, obviously they're trying to make sure that no health rules, quote unquote, are broken and that it's a good product. But sometimes maybe you're tempted to make a decision for the product that might not adhere to what they have in mind.
We started with one middle school, and then we had scaled the program up to 4 different sites in Waco, Texas.
In line with our theme of learning from high agency individuals who are just a few steps ahead, my goal with this episode is to help anyone looking to switch into PM roles from a different industry and equip them with the clear starting few steps to do so.
If you don't have users using your app, then you can't help them become healthier people.
Subscribe on YouTube and any of your favorite podcast apps for weekly episodes and daily clips from those episodes on YouTube and Instagram. And now, without any further ado, here's Jackie. Welcome to the only podcast in the world featuring stories of high agency individuals who are just a few steps ahead of us. Jackie, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I want to start off with somewhat of what is now a tradition on the podcast, which is that what is your controversial opinion / hot take around breaking into PM? I know because you're so deeply involved into this, you must have a few. But can you, help us get the ball rolling with just one of your hot takes?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is a great way to kick off the podcast. And I think there is kind of a lot of misinformation out there around how to break into product. And just to kind of get it out there, I think the main thing that I see a lot of aspiring product managers focusing on when they want to break in is certifications. I hear that all the time.
I've heard that as well. Definitely.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like in my DMs, they'll be asking me, "Hey, Jackie, I want to break in. Which certification should I get? Should I get an Agile certification, or should I get one of those product manager certifications?" Sometimes they're offered through universities, and there's so many offered online nowadays. But that's definitely something that I get asked about a lot. My take on this is, a certification it can only take you so far. And I think the main thing here is, anyone can take a course online and get a certification. I think what really sets somebody apart, and it can really set you up for a career in product management, is actual product experience. I know it's nothing like revolutionary. It's not like a golden ticket into the field by any means, but nothing can replace good old experience in product.
No, I think that's such a wonderful call out, especially because of just kind of how transferable it is to even other domains, right? So, something that I was doing back in the day when I was in graduate school was trying to apply for project management roles. And for whatever reason, I just developed this notion that I have to get a PMP. If I don't have a PMP, there is just no point to anything. So the first and only thing I need to do is get a PMP. And I never ended up getting it just because, I think to your point, how far does that really get you? And also, what are you really learning from that, right? You're just watching videos that, might or might not add any value to that. So I think that definitely rings true. And I think that's also a decent segue for I know you kind of accidentally broke into
Mhm.
product management yourself, right? So I am curious to explore how that happened.
Absolutely. I was going to say, you definitely did your homework, because that's how I like to kind of kick off this story.
And actually, that was one of your posts on LinkedIn where I
Yes.
discovered you actually, yeah, which had that. And I was like, that's so fascinating because here I have these whole swaths of people that are just on their knees to,
Yeah,
where's my opening point? And here, and I know this is just how life works, right? You don't always get to choose, but
exactly.
I'm sure there's a, yeah, interesting story there.
I mean, just that's one of the life lessons that I share with anyone, even outside of product management. I think if you're following your passions and what you're interested in, usually that'll take you to where you're kind of meant to end up in the first place, not necessarily chasing a title, but to kind of take you to from the beginning to the end. Um, my whole life when I was growing up, when I was in middle school and high school, I had always pictured myself going to medical school.
Oh,
I
okay.
thought that that was a path kind of laid out for me. And,
Mhm.
for whatever reasons, whether that be like societal pressures or, parental pressures to become a doctor, that's what I thought my prescribed path was going to be. And so when I went to undergrad, I was a pre-med student. Thankfully, I didn't major in biology like all of the most other pre-med students. I majored actually in nutrition science, which I
Oh,
think a lot of,
interesting. Huh.
yeah. The reason why was because I was really interested in, how the things you put into your body can affect your overall health
Mhm.
and energy and how you feel. And so I kind of had this idea going into undergrad that I was going to differentiate myself from, my competitors or whoever else applying to medical school by saying I was going to take kind of a more preventative lens
That's smart.
to
Yeah.
healthcare. Yeah. So anyways, I was continuing on with my coursework, taking all of the pre-med prereqs, right, to apply to medical school eventually. And it was my junior year, and I remember thinking, I want to shadow a physician. It's
Mhm.
just, one of the things that they recommend all, pre-med students do when they're in undergrad. So I was kind of like going through my checklist of things, like checking off everything to set myself up to go to medical school. And so I ended up shadowing a dermatologist,
Mhm.
and I think it was around maybe 6 to 8 weeks. And
Okay.
I shadowed him maybe, I think, every Tuesday and Thursday, something like that. And I remember thinking, I don't really like going into the hospital on
Hmm.
a day-to-day basis. I can't really picture myself doing this kind of work. And honestly, like by the second or third week, I was like, I'm not enjoying this shadowing experience at all. In fact, I remember because a lot of these appointments that I was shadowing, they were very preventative in nature, but it was like the same thing every time. It was
Hmm.
him essentially saying, are you wearing sunscreen? Please buy sunscreen. Like, that was like the main thing that's drilled into my head was please
Huh.
wear sunscreen. And I actually do. I wear sunscreen every day now. But the point is, I remember after that experience saying, I don't feel connected to this
Hmm.
anymore. And I want to, I want to look into other paths that
Hmm.
I could take. Um, at the same time, I actually was kind of exploring some other projects. I
Mhm.
had actually started a nonprofit with a couple of my friends on campus.
I saw that
Um,
on your LinkedIn. Yeah, yeah.
oh yeah, no way.
Yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
swear. Yeah. What was that about? Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, I was studying nutrition and I had a couple other friends in the program. And we had this idea to start a student organization where we would
Mhm.
go out to different areas, or
Mhm.
it was mostly schools, but there was some like after school programs that we were
Mhm.
targeting mostly in middle schools. And we would go and share different nutrition education with
Oh,
the
nice.
students.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So a noble cause.
Yeah, exactly. And it was mostly targeting like, lower income, lower
Mhm.
socioeconomic status students, and just
Mhm.
kind of a nice way to give back to the community. And so we
Interesting.
started with one middle school, and then we had scaled the program up to 4 different sites in
Oh,
Waco,
wow.
Texas. Yeah, by the time that I had graduated. But it was an incredible experience because I remember loving the whole process from, having a vision of what we want to see become a reality, kind of pitching this idea to different students on campus and different professors to get their buy-in, and then ultimately build up this program over time. And like I said, scale it up to the 4 sites that we were able to get to by the time I graduated. So it was kind of like that was all happening on the side.
Right,
and it helped me realize like that is more in line with what I love to do. I love working with people, coming up with creative ideas, and then scaling this to, a population of consumers or users, right? And so that's when I decided to really kind of look at other careers more seriously. The summer before my senior year, I remember thinking, if I'm not going to go to medical school, I need to start thinking of other careers that I could get into. And typically with a nutrition degree, there's only like one kind of path laid out for you, which is becoming a dietitian, a registered dietitian.
Yep.
And so I knew that was an option. But again, just knowing from my experience in the hospital, I didn't want to be working in a hospital every day and kind of sharing that kind of same advice on a day-to-day basis. I wanted to do something more creative.
Right.
I remember looking at different internships, and there was, this is kind of just like a funny story, actually. It didn't amount to much, but I remember applying to what I thought was a marketing internship. Because back then in my mind, like business was basically either marketing or sales. And so I looked up marketing internships because I didn't know anything about product management.
I mean, they are big parts, right? Don't get me wrong, but I can see how you would be like that. Those are the 2 broadest pillars that are worth attacking. So that part makes sense.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, my new game plan, if I'm not going to go to medical school and I'm not going to become a registered dietitian, I'm going to look for a marketing internship. Because I was like, I don't really want to try sales. I think I'll try marketing.
Yeah.
And so I applied to some, and there was one that I got invited for, like that initial interview for. And it was on site. So I went to this location and met up with the interviewer. And I realized that the job description was a little bit misleading. It was actually an internship, not even an internship. I think it was a full job. And it was essentially the people like in Walmart who are essentially walking around trying to sell you like Spectrum or like internet subscriptions.
Yeah.
That was essentially what the internship was, advertising. And I was like, okay, that's
fascinating.
That's not what that said. That's a little misleading. That's not what I thought I was signing up for. But all that's to say is, I didn't really know anything about the business world or the corporate world. And so I had a lot of learning to do. So what I ended up doing instead was applying to UT Austin. And I ended up going there for my master's program.
Gotcha. And what did you go for? What was your program?
I ended up going to UT Austin for nutrition science as well, actually.
So you stuck to the plan, right?
I stuck to the plan, but the reason why was because I figured I would kind of branch out and make some new connections. And so my goal wasn't necessarily to learn more about nutrition. I mean, I thought it was interesting, but my real plan here was to branch out, meet some people in Austin, network a little bit, and then kind of see where that would take me. And when I was at UT, I actually had an amazing opportunity to join a research lab that was developing a product to help primary care practitioners set personalized nutrition goals with their patients.
Interesting. Like with an app or a portal, or what was the medium for that?
Yeah, it was essentially a web app.
Okay.
And, when I joined the project, it was very much in its infancy stage. So there was nothing developed yet. They had done a couple of, I think, like qualitative analyses of different, papers out there. on the viability of a product like this on the market, but they hadn't started any sort of development on the idea, no competitive analysis, no user research at all. And so me coming into this as a graduate research assistant, you know, my kind of role in this was more so on the data analysis side, or at least that's what it was supposed to be. But I found my role kind of evolving. We were collaborating. Yes, this was kind of like the segue into health tech.
Exactly.
Because we were collaborating with, you know, some human factors engineers at UT Austin, some UX researchers, some designers, and some engineers. Wow. And essentially, I helped, you know, my research lab develop a prototype of this product from the ground up. And we had gone through several stages of generative interviews with different consumers of the product, as well as, you know, both from the provider standpoint and like the patient standpoint. But then we also started doing prototype tests as well, and started iterating on this prototype after, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 of these different interviews. And I found myself at the end of this experience, or towards the end of my master's program, thinking, I wonder what career this is. Like, I want to do what this is.
Right. Yep.
I don't know what this is called. And so that's when I started doing some research online. I started talking to some different people. And that's when I first learned about product management. And so that's kind of the story of how I learned about product. And then I graduated and then found the job I'm currently in.
So was that job still kind of a continuation of the research, or was that like a separate job unrelated to your duties while at UT Austin?
That was the same. So
okay, so it just kind of kept going pretty much. Is that right?
You're talking about my current job, or
yeah.
Oh no, so my current job is different. So
okay, gotcha. But it's still with health tech, where you're doing similar things to the ones that you were doing at
correct.
UT Austin. Gotcha.
So once I graduated from UT Austin, that's when I decided to actually start looking for a job, obviously, because I had finished my master's program.
Yeah.
I was looking for different product manager roles, and then started applying, and then ultimately decided on one with the company I'm currently at.
Amazing. Okay, so that is so fascinating, for the biggest reason just in my head being that this to me sounds like you were at the time beginning to do product management duties without even realizing A, that these are product management duties, and B, what these duties are in the first place. So I am curious to understand how you like went about doing that. So I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. There's this new thing, it needs to go out to people, it needs to be helpful. How did you first come across just now the concepts that I'm sure that are like bread and butter for you, but at the time they would not have been, right? So how did you approach learning them at that point where you're not, there's no course you can take, it's all self-learning, right? So what was that experience like? I'm really curious to explore that.
That's an interesting question, because you're right. Like I said, I didn't have a guidebook that told me how to iterate this prototype.
Exactly. And it's so interesting to even think about how anyone, like, I don't know how I would do that, to be honest with you.
I think if I put myself back then, I really think it was more like intuitive thinking, because I was just kind of under the mindset of, how can we make this product as useful as we can for our users, both from the provider standpoint and from the patient standpoint. And so everything I did, all the questions I asked in our interviews were always focused around like, understanding their pain points and trying to figure out like, okay, how can we make this even better for them? For example, in like the prototype iterations, like how can I take, that piece of feedback that provider gave me, or that, patient gave me, make like a quick change in the prototype, and then test it again in the next interview, and see how that how that changes how the next interview goes.
Fascinating. Yeah, just product iteration, right? Now that we know what it's called actually, but it's so interesting that
Yes.
you were doing that at the time, just almost in a vibe product manager type of way, which I
Yeah,
don't know if that's a real
exactly.
term, but sounds like that's what you were doing at the
I
time.
think learning, it kind of happens like that too, where you kind of intuitively start doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like later when you actually figure out, like, oh, there's an actual term for that process.
Exactly. And I think this is one of my favorite bits of product management. And we have to keep in mind that I'm very much an outsider to this particular industry. It is something that I'm aware of, something that I was fascinated with a little bit back in the day, but never something that I, actually made a point to truly explore. But something that always felt really interesting to me that it was that there is a degree to just how far being high agency and really just pure intuition will take you
Mhm.
in product management that is just different from most other tech fields. Like if say you're a
Mhm.
software developer, how much can you intuitively do here, right? Like it's all critical
Mhm.
thinking. You have to know your stuff. But this is something that just always fascinates me about product management, is that it's almost a gut thing. Sometimes it
Yes.
can be.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I think that's true too. And I love that you brought up engineers as well. Whenever I approach my conversations with other team members, I always try to like include them in
okay,
the product making decisions.
interesting.
Yeah, because I think, you know, to your point, like it is a bit of a gut feeling. It is a bit of intuition. And I don't think I'm the only one that can come up with those on my own. I think it's really great to tie in like what my engineers are thinking or what my designer is thinking and
Mhm.
kind of evolve the product around that.
Absolutely. And then because you've been in this specific niche of product management, what are some of the, like, can you just help contrast health tech PM with general PM for our listeners?
Absolutely. Um, yeah, there's different flavors of product managers. I think from the health tech perspective, it's interesting because, you're not only trying to develop a product that users enjoy using, you also have another responsibility, which is helping them be healthier,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Hmm.
I would actually say that the stakes are a little bit higher in that
I would
regard.
agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you have this responsibility now to, again, like I said, not only create a product that looks and feels great, but it's actually also providing or leading to health outcomes.
Mhm.
Typically, this means you're going to be collaborating with different stakeholders than kind of like your traditional stakeholders. Of course, you're going to have your business stakeholders in any product manager role.
Mhm.
But in health tech positions, health tech PM roles, you also have your clinical stakeholders. And,
Okay. Yeah. What
it's,
does that mean? Sorry. How?
yeah,
Yeah.
great question. So clinical stakeholders, that's kind of like a broad bucket of folks who have some sort of subject matter expertise in
Ah.
you know, how to provide high quality care to
Okay.
your users.
Gotcha.
And so in my case, this is going to be a mix of gastroenterologists, or also just people who are credentialed
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
know how to provide quality care to people.
Interesting. I see.
So it could also, depending on, the type of app you're working on, it could be like psychologists, other medical
Right.
doctors, dietitians, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there ever just, like a clash of heads with the clinical stakeholders, as you said, because, obviously they're trying to make sure that no health rules, quote unquote, are broken and that it's a good product. But sometimes maybe you're tempted to make a decision for the product that might not adhere to what they have in mind. Does that ever happen?
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
it definitely does. And, this is where the role of the product manager becomes really critical,
Mhm.
because, you know, our clinical stakeholders want our members to be healthier. Typically, you're going to have other stakeholders who want the product to be as seamless and easy to use as possible. And to your point, sometimes it can feel like those two things are at odds with each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's really important, for any product manager in the health tech space to have that really tight-knit relationship with your clinical stakeholders and with your business stakeholders. So that way you can understand the concerns from both sides and use that to make the best decision moving forward. But it's also interesting too, because, if you don't have users using your app, then you can't help them become healthier people. And
That's so true. Yeah.
It definitely is like a fine line here. Because you want them to use your app and enjoy using it, but at the same time, you got to provide features that help them achieve health outcomes.
Yeah, I love this. Like, this is just so fascinating. It's just, I just genuinely had no idea, and it now feels kind of obvious in retrospect. But yeah, I had just never until just now stopped to think how product managers would operate within like the healthcare/health tech space. So yeah, I'm just so thoroughly enjoying this conversation. The other question I had on this kind of segment here is, what part of your team has, or what percentage of your team generally at your company has a background in healthcare? Which, like, can we agree that you have a background in healthcare? Is that like a fair thing to say?
Yes.
Okay, so what percentage of your team shares that, or kind of semi shares that, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think to say you have a background in healthcare, it can take a couple different flavors, right? Like if you've studied any sort of
biology stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that can be one flavor of having like a healthcare background. But I think it varies, right? Like I think the more you're in the healthcare space and the more experience you have in that space, that also becomes like quality experience, like that can ultimately translate to healthcare. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I was just curious, but just because of just thinking about how many just general purpose product managers, so not necessarily health within the health space, can potentially be thinking about segueing or looking at roles that are that have more to do with health tech, and maybe how they can bridge that gap. But in my mind, I feel like a more pertinent version of that question is, if we even remove the health tech from the like problem statement, if there is a young person that is looking at breaking into product management, what would your advice be to them? Like, what are some of the first couple steps maybe that you would recommend that they take to achieve that goal? That brings us to the end of our episode with Jackie. Check out part 1 if you haven't already. I got some really good feedback around that, and a lot of you all loved that. So hopefully you like this one just as much. If you would like to support me, the easiest way to do that is by subscribing on YouTube and leaving me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify or any of your favorite podcast apps.